Hello, Prashanti. Um, we have another question here on 140, and I guess also H1 and H4 EAD. I just got my I-140 approved and plan to get married next year. What is the shortest way for my wife to get a work authorization in the US? And I still hold an H1B. I thought she would get the H4 and EAD since I have a valid I-140.
So he's answering his question. He does, the person, he or she does get H4 EAD, and that's the easiest and
But
fastest way to get.
I just want to break you there. When you said, he's answering his own question. Unfortunately, people, do a lot of research on forums, take examples from other cases. But, for all the viewers out there, I would like to, you know, tell you that immigration law is complex. Do not experiment with your own cases and don't jump into conclusions. As I always tell people, if you go to an hospital, you see a doctor or a nurse, don't take advice from a patient. So thank you for
That's
answering.
sound advice. That's
Yeah.
sound advice, Dan, and I will just answer that. Uh, if he's gotten a I-140 approval, and obviously he seems to be on a H1, for his spouse to come into the country is on a H4. The easiest kind of visa to get is a dependent visa. So as long as you're able to show marriage, the relationship that is a marriage certificate, and you're able to show that the spouse is actually on a H1, this person should be able to come in on a H4. And once they come in on a H4, they can then file for H4 EAD since the spouse is on an has an I-140 approval. And of course, when the spouse's priority date gets current, then both can adjust by filing a 485 together. And that way, both of them will get the green card at the same time.
So I have a follow-up question here. When you said the easiest way is to come as a dependent on H4, what is the typical documentation requirement after they got married to obtain a visa at a US consulate abroad?
So they have to apply for a visa on the website, and there's a list of documents that they send you. Obviously, you submit those documents, but in general, just to give you an idea, the documents that they usually ask for is proof of relationship, which is a marriage certificate. If you're married in India, which was probably or some other country, not the US, obviously, because the person is outside the country, then the marriage certificate that is required in that country is fine. So whatever proof of marriage you have, whatever the system or the culture is, or the law is rather, in that country, you have to submit that document as proof of marriage. And then you have to submit your spouse's proof of status. So basically, if the person is on a H1 status, then the I-797 approval, and then you'd also have to submit his current pay stubs and most probably a W-2 as well.
Okay, so when you said W-2, what if the person has not worked for a year and he's only here for, say, 6 months, and employer has not issued a W-2? Can they still use just the pay
Then,
stubs? And
right,
how many?
right. Then just pay stubs. Then just the current pay stubs that they have, last 3 pay stubs or whatever pay stubs they have should be fine, and you can add an employment letter as well.
Is it if somebody is working through a consultancy and they're working on a client project, do they need a client letter, end client letter for the H4 stamping?
Absolutely not. At this point, the consulate is not asking for, should not be asking for a client letter. So, so of course, consulates can do whatever they want, but they should not be asking for a client letter because USCIS itself is not asking for client letters in a H-1B approval.
So what happens? They go to the consulate, they get into trouble, or there's an administrative like a query. Uh, will your firm be representing also consulates worldwide, or your services are only limited to the your immigration practice to the USCIS and the agencies in the US?
So we can offer support, and we can write briefs and write memos, and then the person can go and submit those briefs or memos. For example, if a waiver is needed, we can prepare a waiver and we can give it to that person, and the person then can submit it. But unfortunately, in person, they don't allow attorneys to represent, they don't allow us to represent our clients in person at any of the consulates. Unfortunately, that has to change, but right now they don't allow attorney representation at the consulates. But we can support in other ways.
All right. So if you need services from Attorney Prashanthi Reddy, you can see the links down below in the description box. But she can be reached at area code 212-354-1010. That's 212-354-1010. Thank you, Prashanthi, for answering that question.